Everybody ready? I'm ready. Let's do this. So hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Ball. I'm Director of Engineering at Electrona. And yeah, this talk is about basically taking a SwiftUI app for macOS, and again, it could apply to iOS as well, and making it manageable by MDM. So we, if you were looking for a sales pitch, that's unfortunately not what we're doing here. We want to give you something that's kind of a value and kind of show you like how this talk kind of shows off some of the manageable pieces of one of our apps, but specifically it's about a particular app that we made just for this particular session to give you, again, good content. If you want to talk to us about some of the things we do, like Patch, which is a good patch management tool for macOS. We do also help people with pro services and things related to Apple device management. But come see us at our booth. We have a booth downstairs. Love to talk to you. For some reason you have questions about some of the things that we do or this talk, come find me and we can talk about it. So yeah, why do vendors not make their apps manageable by MDM? It's kind of like it's kind of wild. When you see, like, as I go through this, I'm going to spend time talking to you about the app to give you some context about the app, but the portion related to managing the app, it's going to give you good content, but it's you know, you're going to see that it's not incredibly difficult to do it. But I'll show you you're going to see some code. I think it's going to be fun for you. So basically what kind of our mission is to take a useful app and configure it to be managed by MDM. Initially, when I was kind of trying to figure out the app that I would build for this, I was thinking of more kind of like a settings app where you'd have toggles and labels, text fields, and things that you could manage by MDM, but I'm like, no one's going to use that. Hopefully you have something that can do password management, but it's a useful app, and we're gonna take it and in kind of a non-managed state and then get it managed, and you can see kind of the whole life cycle related to that. You can get the first release of this app, which basically what I did is I created a GitHub repo and I put in one release of the app that's in the non-managed state, and then later on down in the presentation I'll show you the managed state of that, and you can kind of compare both. So I'll leave this up for a minute. This may show you a redirection page. Just wait, and it'll take you to GitHub. You can download both the source code for that commit and release in zip form for that commit as well. I'll give this just another few seconds. And basically my idea for this was to see if there were some password generation APIs out there that we could use to create the password, and give us a bunch of settings that we can set to determine the complexity of the password, the length, uppercase, lowercase letters, all those types of things. So I actually found kind of a cool website called, it's passwordwolf.com, but basically it's a website you can use to generate passwords. You can see some of the options we have related to the complexity if we choose uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, whatever the case may be. But they also have an API that you can leverage to get passwords too. So if we scroll down to the bottom of passwordwolf.com, which is an incredible name, they have a section specific to the API. You can see it's pretty straightforward. We can kind of dive into this, but basically what you have is a URL with the settings as URL query parameters. So basically kind of the URL with question mark, and then you have query parameters after that. And it's just kind of big for my ear. Can you? Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Maybe better? Better?
You can also bend the tip closer to your
I didn't do that. Apologies. Better? Good? Testing? Testing? Testing. There we go. Apologies again. So yeah, essentially what we want to do is create an app that can generate this URL for us, hit the website or hit the API, get us passwords, and then we can display those in the UI. So again, you have things like including uppercase and lowercase numbers. One of the cool things is actually you can use the API to generate several passwords, which was just kind of interesting. And the reason why I thought this was interesting is because we could hit the API one time and get 10 passwords and then just display like the next password in that list without actually hitting the API each time. So I thought that was kind of neat. So the app we're going to build, basically it's configurable password generation or configurable password generation settings and UI components. So we'll be able to determine, basically set via profile, if you include uppercase, lowercase, things like that. We're going to reduce API calls by retrieving multiple passwords at once. You can customize that if you want. One-click password generation, copy to clipboard, which is kind of, you'll need that. Automatic clipboard clearing after 60 seconds. Clear password cache, so those 9, 10, 100 passwords that you've cached, we'll clear those when the settings are changed. Because again, we're going to retrieve a list of passwords and we're going to propagate one at a time to the UI. If for some reason we want to include or exclude uppercase letters and we change those settings, we want to get rid of the passwords that we've stored because those don't comply with the complexity that we have set in the UI right there. And it's going to be a menu bar app because I just kind of like menu bar apps. And we have a menu bar app that we've recently released. Again, not a sales pitch, but you should take a look at it. It's pretty cool. So what it's going to look like, I'm sorry, but I love Keynote. Unfortunately, this is all done in Keynote with SF symbols. Look how amazing that is. Oh my God, it's even better. So this is what the default icon looks like. You'll be able to configure that with a profile too. Click that thing, and then it shows up. So what I can actually do is show you kind of live what that tool looks like, or what the menu bar app looks like. If I could see where my mouse is. Let's go here. So you can see, we can drop it down. Oh. Go. Wasn't working?
You can see what's up there here.
Oh, it's in my other. Oh, that's very weird. Okay, you're not going to be able to see it then, unfortunately.
You can drag the window over to that other screen if you want to see it. You have to go to the one that has the menu. Yeah. Do it. Peeking out. Come on, get the one. If you go to the menu bar.
Here, I'll just do it, yeah, like this. And then I can zoom in. Boom.
Ooh.
So yeah, that's what it looks like. This is our kind of our logo there. You can see we've added some kind of neat UI tweaks. But you can choose if you want uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters. This coincides with what the API allows. Password length, symbols or numbers or letters to exclude. Sometimes people don't want zeros or O's in their password because you can't tell the difference. And how many passwords we retrieve at once. So you can see this is kind of more like debugging essentially, but it shows how many passwords we have in the cache. When we click new, we basically hit that API. We've retrieved 9 passwords. You can see we have 8 passwords left. I can copy this to the clipboard. We'll see a little UI notification that we've done that. Copied. And then that password is going to remain on our clipboard for 60 seconds. If for some reason the clipboard changes between now and 60 seconds, we don't clear the keychain or the password from the clipboard. And there's a little footer here. You can highlight over it. So yeah, it's basically a functional app, but yet you have no manageability over that particular app. This is the app that you would get if you went to the URL that I showed. You can run that, and then it's going to show up in your menu bar. And if for some reason you're like, hey, I don't know how to close this thing, if you just click here, it actually closes the app, kind of just a hidden closure thing. So let me see if I can now go back to my boom slide. Oh. There we go. Okay. And then next. So you get an idea of what, the functionality of the app, how it works. It's actually a useful app. You could use it. And yeah, so the first thing we want to talk about is the view model related to the app. And I did a talk last year. It was an intro to SwiftUI for macOS talk. If for some reason you kind of want to know more about SwiftUI, the intro is, it's not going to teach you Swift or SwiftUI, but it gives you an idea of how you would mock up the app and things related to view model. But basically, the view model is, it's kind of, it's like the business logic related to a view. So if you think about a view as one image in the app, all the things related to, if you click a button, what happens, functions and methods related to buttons, all that kind of stuff, that would be in your view model. And our view model is going to be specific to the password generation settings. But yeah, it kind of separates the business logic from the view. View models improve maintainability and scalability, so you don't have one view that has all of kind of a ton of functions and stuff like that in there. You'd have a view related to just the UI itself. You can notify, the view model can notify a view when it may need to update particular images or views and things like that via the use of published properties. And I'm going to talk about app storage, which is like a published property as well. You can manage and propagate errors that occur in the background task to the UI. This app doesn't have that because it's kind of too much to go through, but that's kind of one of the useful portions of a view model, is to propagate errors to the UI. And again, like I said, we're going to talk about some code here, but hopefully, again, you can see all of this in the Xcode project. I'll show you the finished product where we kind of have changed some of these to make it manageable. But let's look at the view model a little bit. Hopefully you can see this. I think it's big. Right here, this is where we have our view models publishing properties to the UI, where we're binding to the toggles, to the text fields and things like that. You can see, like for instance, we have the upper variable there. It's a Boolean set to true by default. So when you load the app initially, the toggles are going to be set to on. So we're going to include uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special, things like that. We're setting a default string of characters to exclude. That's basically directly from the API, their exclusion list. So that's what I was doing. And the repeat count by default is set to 9. And again, these are stored kind of in the view model and published to the UI. And we'll be able to interact with these variables from the UI. And if for some reason we need to leverage these properties in other views, we can do that too, because they're not stored in the view itself.
Hey, people, can you guys turn that light off in front of the screen?
Playing tic-tac-toe. Hey, better? Better? All right. And the mic's still working, so I think we're. In the meantime, I'm going to continue. So the next portion of this view model is basically a function that we'll call from the UI to either generate a password, meaning get the passwords from the API, or use the next password in the list if we don't have any. So that's basically what this is doing. We have a function to reset the passwords. Again, this is exposed to the UI, so we can call this when we make adjustments to the settings. Again, like I said, we want to clear the passwords that are stored because they don't comply with the new settings in the UI, so we'll have a function to reset all those passwords. This is basically the function that's going to call the API. The one thing I'll point out is we're going to generate a URL. So we're going to take the settings that are in the UI and generate the URL based on the settings that, if we include uppercase letters, lowercase, so And then we're basically hitting the API, decoding the response from the API into a password, which is basically a string. And then, then we would basically present that to the UI. Here is the method we use to generate the URL. And as you can see, we're basically looking at the settings, if it's uppercase, lowercase, and then we're generating a URL on the fly based on those settings. Hopefully no one has epilepsy in here. So yeah, that's how we're going to generate the API. Actually, if you have the Xcode project as well, there's some debug logging that you'll see, and when you do generate, when this function runs, it will generate it'll hit the API and it'll tell you what URL it used, just so that you can see what URL is being used to hit the API. And then this is just a variable that we'll use to determine if the generate button is enabled or not. So if for some reason you have uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special all off, well, we can't actually generate a password with no characters allowed. So then we just disable the button, and we do that again from the view model. Could be done in the view as well, but it makes sense to do it in the view model. The next thing we're going to look at is some of the views. Now, we're not going to go through like this. It's funny because it's a pretty simple app, but there's a lot of code related to it. We'll go through kind of some of the stuff, but not everything. Specifically, the things that we can manage is what I'm kind of focusing on. Again, if you take a look at the app, we have several views here that we're displaying. It's kind of best practice to split views up to make the file as small as possible. So for instance, this is what I'm calling the title view. It contains the image that we're going to display and the title. And this is just basically in a VStack where we're stacking these views in the app interface itself. And I'll show you that too. But this is the title view. I'll show you a little bit about this file, titleview.swift, if you've got the project. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, it's a horizontal stack where we have the button on one side, which is the image as the label, and then the text to the side. And that button closes the app when you run it. You can actually, again, there's some code in there to, when you hover over it, it's going to expand just slightly with the scale effect, which is just kind of cool. And then we have the label menu bar pass-gen next to it. Seems like a good thing that we could manage. Potentially you want to change that title to something else. We'll take a look at that. The next view that we're going to look at, these we actually won't look at because they're pretty straightforward, but there's a copy button view, and that's in buttons.swift if you have the package, or if you have the project. And then we have the other view for our button. Again, that's in a horizontal stack. Generate button view. This is the button that generates the view. I'm not going to go into details of the view too much, but this one I will, settings view. So this is all of the settings in one view. It's actually in a form. So Apple provides kind of form, which seems somewhat like a VStack, but you can get some kind of UI features in it. There's a grouped method, which is what I was using to display the view. But basically, if you see here, we're passing in our view model, which was called pass-gen manager, and we're going to leverage that and bind to, those toggles are going to be bound to those properties that are in our view model. And you can see that here, where we have the uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special. Those are all just simple toggles, and we're just binding to the properties that are in our view model. So this is where, when we toggle those switches, it's going to actually change the value of those properties in our view model. Again, you could do that in the view, but it just makes sense because we have a lot of settings related to the password and the password generation that we kind of encompass that all in one file. And then we'll get into kind of slightly more complex variations of components that you can manipulate. This is a stepper, so the up-down option. we're displaying kind of a label. Stepper's kind of weird the way it shows up in a form, so I basically had to create kind of a custom one. And as you can see, I have the last portion of that line shows the range of numbers that we're going to display. So we're basically capping that from 1 to 30 in the UI. The options we would exclude, that's just a simple text field. By default, it's using the exclude property that was in our view model, but you can adjust that, and it's a text field, and that value of that text field is bound to the variable in our view model. Then we have the repeat count. All of these things we're going to be able to manage with a profile. I've capped that to a range between 1 and 100. I wouldn't imagine that the API would return that many. I didn't really test it, but you could try it. So that's the settings view. Then we have a footer view that I'll show you a little bit, but basically it's just a URL that can be displayed. Also seems like a good thing that you potentially could manage if you were going to kind of play around with something like this, where maybe you'd want to have your own URL rather than this one, right? But maybe you should just go to that one because it's amazing. But then basically, like I mentioned, we have several views we're basically stacking up in a VStack, in a vertical stack. And the content view, again, you can do this. There's all sorts of different ways that you could do this, but in the content view is where I basically put all my views in to create one single view. And I'll show you where we kind of split these up a little bit. It's slightly more complex than that, but we have our title bar, password field, our buttons view, which is its own H stack, and then below that we have the settings view, and then below that we have the kind of the footer view. And I'll show you the content view, how, again, we're kind of splitting those up. Again, it's useful information to have when we talk about how to manage the app, and it's just kind of fun to see the code as well. So again, we're passing in our view model, which is PassGen Manager, so that we can access that view model from multiple views. And then again, if we look here, we have a vertical stack of views that we're stacking up. The top view is this title view. Then I have an embedded VStack that has the password field itself. And then below the password field, we have the text field that shows, or the text view that shows how many passwords are remaining. Again, that's kind of like a debug type thing, but it's kind of cool to just see how many passwords you have cached. And then we have the horizontal stack, which has our two buttons, the copy button and the generate button. I grouped those together because I wanted to put some padding around those specifically. And at the bottom, we have another type of stack, a Z stack, which is more like a stack that is from like the back coming forward. So instead of stacking things vertically or horizontally, you can stack things kind of in a layer as well. So we have the settings view, and then above that, actually at the bottom, is the footer view, and then actually offset that to go into the padding area so that it just kind of looks nice. So yeah, we basically went through some of the things that we could manage, kind of layout of the app. And so now let's kind of get into how we can actually manage this. So here we go, manage with MDM. So the first thing that we talk about is user defaults. If you aren't super familiar with Swift and use bash shell commands, you'll notice the word defaults there. So basically, user defaults is a way to interact with that same kind of user default settings system on your Mac. And I'll show you the kind of how it compares with shell. But basically, it's a simple key value store for persisting small amounts of data. So you could use plist for large amounts of data if you wanted to, but that's not really the use of it. It's more for settings and things like that. MDMs can push configuration profiles that write to user defaults. So when you deploy an MDM profile that sets a key for a specific app, that app can then use user defaults to read the value of that profile. Settings that are managed by MDM take precedence over user level settings. You've probably seen this if you've done any sort of kind of Mac admin work. The user can have a particular setting that they may set within the UI of the app, but if you manage that, Their ability to potentially change that may or may not change. Which is one of the reasons why we have this talk, because sometimes you'll see, you probably have all seen this, you manage a particular key for an app, and the toggle or the switch or the checkbox is still active in the UI. You're like, why? Yeah, I thought I managed this. It's pretty easy to disable those, and I'll show you that too. Yeah, you can use user defaults to determine if the setting is actually managed by MDM. So not only can you get the value of what the MDM is pushing down, you can determine if it's an MDM that's actually setting the value versus the user, which is why it's basically what you would use to determine if you need to disable a field or not by knowing whether it's managed by an MDM. So this may look pretty familiar. Hopefully you can see it. It's using the defaults read command, reading a plist for this enable feature X key, and determining if it's true, it's going to be 1. If it's false, it's going to be 0. If it's 1, then you see features enabled. And I'll show you the equivalent in Swift. So in Swift, you basically use user defaults, and Swift is strongly typed, so we have to specify. You actually don't have to, but in this case, we're basically saying, hey, this is a Boolean value. Give me the Boolean value for enable feature X, and if it's enabled, you can print features enabled. So here it's kind of both side by side. It's one of the kind of small cases where you have literally the exact same number of lines of code in Shell as you do Swift. That doesn't often happen, but in this case it does. So here's how we would write to user defaults with defaults. Again, defaults write, path to the property list. Here we'll specify the key, and then the type of that value, and then the value itself. By default, if it's a string, you don't have to add the string option. You probably have written defaults write, property list, key value. But if it's an integer or Boolean, you have to specify the type. And here's the equivalent in Swift. Again, user defaults standard set. And here, since we know electrona is a string, it's going to be written to user defaults as a string. Same thing for the number there. It's an integer. It's going to be written as a number or an integer to user defaults. Same thing for the Boolean value. Again, same number of lines, which is incredible if you look at some other stuff that's in Swift too. So there's a cool comparison I thought was neat. So now kind of the next thing, we kind of learned about user defaults and how you can leverage it in an app. There's a little bit more to it, but don't have a ton of time. So app storage is basically like a wrapper around user defaults. So typically you'd use kind of a property wrapper like app storage in a view or in your view model, which can be bound to toggles or text fields just like a publish property. So it's a SwiftUI property wrapper that syncs with user defaults. That's app storage. Can be used to bind SwiftUI views and components. Automatically updates the view when the value changes. There's kind of a caveat to that. It doesn't typically support observing MDM updates in real time. There's some ways that you can get around it, but if you get the app with the link that I show you later, you'll see that you probably have to close the app and then relaunch it before it reacts to the profile. So here's how you can use both app storage and user defaults to respect MDM configuration. So where we saw those published properties previously, using app storage is very similar. You're basically specifying the key. You have the property name, which is upper, what type it is, bool. You actually don't have to have that, I don't think. You just, because true is a Boolean value, but I like to kind of include that. And then if we look at, I think I'd go through it here. Yeah, so you're calling the app storage key, property name. This is too much. Too much keynote. And then, yeah, so here, when I mentioned you can determine if a key is actually managed by MDM, this is how you would do that. So you could set up a property like is upper managed. It's a Boolean property, and you're using user default standard object is forced function to determine if that key is forced by the MDM. So if a user sets the key, it wouldn't be forced. If an MDM sets a key, it would be forced. So this is how you'll determine if you need to disable some UI components by determining if it's forced by the MDM. And again, object is forced, key, but you can see we have some redundancies here that you can account for because we're basically typing the key twice, but in this case, it's fine. So here is the manageable version of the app. Both here's a release version in GitHub where you can get both the release in notarized in a zip file, or the Xcode project itself, so you can see kind of the difference between the two. I'll leave this up for a minute so that y'all can take a look at that, grab it. Sam? Okay. I'm having Sam scope a profile to my device so that I can launch the app and it be managed. Thank you, Sam. So yeah, I want to take a look at now, again, kind of some of the changes that we made. I'm not going to go through all the changes, but I'll go through some. Again, in our view model, passGenManager.Swift, you'll see we changed the published properties that were bound to those settings to use app storage. So now, realistically, if you were going to create an app, even if you didn't intend for it to be managed by MDM, you probably would have used app storage. It's just, I kind of created the app with this phase of non-managed versus managed things in mind. Probably should start with app storage anyways, because what would happen in the previous version of the app, you'd launch the app, everything would be on, all your toggles would be on. You close the app, even if you made adjustments, launch the app again, and those toggles would be set back to default because we're not storing those user defaults, whereas this will store those settings to user default, so when you close the app, it will relaunch in the same state that it was before. But this is also what we'll use to manage the app too. We've added another, so not only will we be able to kind of customize things that are available in the UI, but some things that may be hidden to the user, we can enable too via management. Here, it seems like for security purposes, maybe when the UI goes away, if we have cached passwords or a password in the password field, we want to clear that out. So we have an option to do that now that wasn't there before, and we can enable that by MDM. Maybe you want to, if your company uses an app similar to this, maybe you want to kind of reset something that maybe is stored on the device. And then if we go back to the bottom, where we had some of those computed properties again, we just kind of showed you examples of this, but basically what we're going to do is use these properties to determine if some of these UI elements are disabled or not. Moving on. Boom. A few more areas where I've implemented some changes where this particular app can be managed. We have now, because this is not really related to the password, this is more kind of things related to this particular view. We have a custom image URL key where you can actually set a custom image that's displayed rather than the Electrona Peaches logo. You can do that here in this view and essentially change the branding very easily without building a new version of the app. If changing the title, I mentioned that may be a good thing to modify as well via MDM. We have an option for that as well using this menu bar passgen. Also, if you got the latest version of the app, the code in that repository, there's a mobile config file, a sample mobile config that will set all of these keys to sample values. So you can see what it looks like in both non-managed state and managed state and how the things are disabled. And really, I'm kind of just when I initialize this view, I'm basically determining if we have a custom image that has been set and then setting the image URL. And then I'm basically just using async image, which is a way that you can set up a SwiftUI app to download an image on the fly and also show a progress bar or some sort of a view while the image is downloading. And if you play around with the app, you'll see that too. If for some reason somebody hasn't set the custom image, we'll just display the same Electrono logo as before. So we're basically, if there's a key set to set the image, we'll try to get the image. If not, you get the default logo. And then again, the title here, you could adjust that via MDM. So instead of hard coding the title of the app, we do that via computer property. Content view, which may be the last view that I'll show, perhaps. But basically at the bottom, that feature that I was mentioning, when you close the app, those passwords will be reset, and specifically when the view appears. So you click the button, the view is going to appear. When the view disappears, we'll clear out passwords so that we don't have any passwords that are kind of on the, in the UI, so someone potentially can't see the last password that you used. And so this is our settings view, and this is basically where we're disabling features. And there's a disable view modifier that we're basically using the, is linked managed, is special managed. If so, we're just disabling it. This is literally, when you think about apps where you're managing a key and it doesn't disable the UI element, it's like, what is happening? Because if it's a SwiftUI app, it's like super easy to actually accommodate that. And I can show you an example of, in our patch menu bar app, you can see this is a settings view that the user has access to manipulate some settings to. We can zoom in, again, power of Keynote, show you that the features is disabled. We actually take it a step further, where when you hover over the seal icon, you can see that it's managed by your organization. And this is really similar to what Apple does. If you look at the login items in system settings, they basically have the same exact icon because it's just an SF symbol. And they say this setting has been configured by profile is actually what they say, which we found that I think people don't know exactly what that means if you're just an end user, so we just changed it to configured by your organization. So again, we're showing that you can disable UI elements. You can also use that is managed property that we computed to determine if you display another view that gives them information on why it's disabled, right? So let's take a look at the profile. It's pretty simple. I'm just going to look at the payload itself and not kind of all the other keys related to the profile. But you can see essentially what we have is 12 keys in that payload that we now can configure and manage portions of the app. And I'll show you just the keys here, but we have the upper and the lower. Again, these are sorted. When you lint the plist, it sorts the keys, so it's kind of out of order in which I would typically want to display it, but it's because it's linted and in the correct format. And we have custom image URL, footer URL, and menu bar symbol names. So you actually can change the menu bar icon as well using SF symbols. So all those things to be managed. And here, and again, that example profile is in the project that you can upload into your MDM, or you could just install on your device. I'd never typically want to tell somebody to install a profile that they got from me even, but you can actually take a look at what it's doing. This is what it's doing, and it's not going to do anything else, but yeah. One of the things that we kind of really try to do is have really good documentation. Again, if you're going to have manageable settings in your app, you should have really good documentation about that. We try to do the same. Oftentimes we see vendors that just don't have good documentation about how to, what keys are available, what is an example, what is that key actually going to do. So we think documentation is really important. And specifically for our patch tool, we have over 80 keys that can be set. And so it's kind of daunting to also tell people, okay, here's the documentation, just go make your profile. Like, there's so many things that can be customized that we actually kind of went, what I think, above and beyond and made an actual app that you can use to configure all the settings in patch and generate a mobile config. So this tool would basically spit out a mobile config file based on your settings, and you could upload that into your MDM. Again, all documentation is kind of built into this too. So again, when we see vendors have some sort of software that can be managed or maybe you don't even know if it can be managed or not because they just don't have good documentation. It really just drives us crazy, and we wanted to make sure that everything that Patch can do, our customers know about, and it gives them a really nice UI to do it. Even gives you a preview of exactly what Patch is going to look like. So again, we think we went above and beyond with kind of showing all the capabilities of the app, what keys are available, and giving you an option to preview it. Again, Keynote, boom. You can see what it would look like on that particular user's device, which is kind of cool. And one of the things that I have plenty of time. So one of the things that I had got questions for last year in my SwiftUI. Well, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to see if I can show you the app in its managed form. Let's see if I can run the app now. Yeah, so you'll see, hopefully, that if I can do this, the menu bar icon has changed. We're downloading the image on the fly. Wi-Fi is incredible here, so that's not really working. Password generator, we changed the title. We've disabled toggles. All this stuff is disabled. If I generate a password, I just must have no internet right now for some reason. But yeah, if I were to generate a password and it could actually reach the API, it would be stored obviously in that password field, but when I closed the app, that password would be removed because we configured it via MDM to do that. Yeah, it's unfortunate because it was a funny image too. Dang it. It's Morty from Rick and Morty, but oh, and you can see also we changed the logo here, or the link from electrona.com. This will take you to, it's going to display kind of funny, but it's the GitHub repo for this particular project. So yeah, play around with it on your device, inspect the profile, make sure we're not doing anything crazy for you. Promise you we're not. So again, what I was talking about was last year in both my sessions, one session on macOS SwiftUI app and another one for a Swift CLI command line tool. And we kind of walked through things in Xcode and showed people kind of how you could make the command line tool or make the app. But then everybody's like, okay, how do I get the app like in my MDM? So I wanted to kind of take this a step further and kind of show you there are several ways that you can do this, but how you can actually package the app and get kind of a nice package so that you don't have to, I see some people taking the debug version of the app or the command line tool and uploading that in their MDM, which is not what you really want to do. Gosh. Okay, so bonus, packaging the app. So I'll show you one way that you can do this, and it's a scripted method that you can use Xcode build to basically create an archive, and then you can package it up. So if we look in Xcode a little bit, this is basically right out of the project that you had links to. But if we click on the project there on the right-hand side, or on the left-hand side rather, you'll go to build settings, and then there's an installation directory. So by default, it's to the applications folder when you create a SwiftUI app for macOS, obviously. Just changing that to the utilities folder. So we're basically putting the app is intended to be in applications utilities, and this is where we do that. And you can actually search for that to make it, because there's just a ton of settings that you can change. Search for installation directory, and then you can change that to, there's a variable, tons of variables that you can use in Xcode. Local apps directory / utilities is what you want. And again, that's how it's set in your app, or in the project. The next thing that I actually did is I created a launchd plist that is going to be embedded or also included in the package to launch the menu bar app automatically. You can see it in the UI in Xcode, but I just wanted to show what that looks like. Simple. There's a label to the launch agent, limit load to session type to Aqua, which basically means when the user logs in. The program that we're going to run is basically the binary of the app, which is, again, in applications utilities. And then run at load is true. So basically, when you install the package, it's going to install the app and install the launch agent and actually launch. It's going to load the launch agent too, so the app will immediately appear in the menu bar. This is kind of a good way to package an app is to, if you have to use a launch agent, you also launch it so that the user doesn't have to log out and log back in. The next thing we want to do is we want to copy that plist that we've created for the launch agent into the project's root folder. Again, if you look in the, there's build settings, there's a copy files option, and we've done that here. We basically are copying it to an absolute path that is going to exist in the root section when we build the app in library launch agents, and then it's going to copy the plist there. But the end result is basically you're going to have a package that has the app where it's supposed to be, the launch agent where it's supposed to be, and a post install that's going to launch or load the launch agent after it's done. So this script is what's going to build the package. And again, you can do this on your device as well. It'll build the package with everything needed. Basically what we're doing is this script will also bump the version for us as we go. So each build you make, it's going to create a new build version so that you can actually maintain kind of an auto incrementing version of the app as well as you build it, which is kind of typically what you'd want to do, but obviously there's lots of different ways to do it. This function is going to set the version, so we're going to be prompted if we want to set the version to like 1.2 or 1.3 if we want. Otherwise, if we don't want to change the actual kind of CF bundle short version string, we can change the build version automatically. Here's where we ask, do you want to set up a new version? Yes or no. If you do, we'll set that version. You just enter the version in. This is where we're going to bump the version, or the CF bundle version of the app. Then here we're basically just constructing the version that we're going to append onto the package name, basically. So that when we create our package, we want to upload that into our MDM. We just don't want to have a package that says, product.pkg, because then we don't know what version it is. So appending the package, the version to the package is always good. Again, a lot of different ways to do this. You could set this up in GitHub. You can do, there's methods of packaging apps, typically not with, not command line tools and things with agents bundled in, but you can use something called Fastlane to do that, typically for iOS devices. Xcode Build has some stuff, or Xcode Cloud has some stuff to create an archive, but it's typically a zip file. If you wanted to do a package, you'd have to kind of roll your own typically, but you could do that in CI/CD as well. We have a post install. Again, that post install is going to launch or load the launch agent. Package build command, which is going to create our component package, so you can actually create multiple packages and then have one package that contains all of those. That's what we're doing here. And one thing that you probably would want to do is sign the package when you're creating it. And you can add a sign flag to do that. And then this is where we're going to create a distributable package with product build. Again, you'd want, and we're specifying our component package as to be a portion of that distributable package. You would want to sign this too, and very likely you'd want to use something like Notary Tool to notarize the package as well, so that it's basically ready to go. And then you can upload that directly in your MDM. But once you're done, I'll actually show you, again, Keynote. This is what you'd run, and then there's going to be a lot of output. It's going to be kind of like this for a minute. And then once it's done, it's going to give you some files in a build folder. One is going to be an XC archive file, which basically is going to contain, boom, this. So if there's a products folder, and you can see in the products folder, this is kind of like the file system of the package, or what's going to be laid down in the package. We have our applications folder, utilities, our app, and we also have library, launch agents, and then our launch DP list, which is actually going to launch the app. And basically what we're doing in this archive process is we're using the products folder as our root to create the package. So it makes it really easy to create that package exactly how you want it to be done. The other thing that's going to be built is the package, and you can see, playing with this a few times, we have 1.0.8, .9, .11, so it's going to create a version package for you that you can upload into your MDM. Likely, this is not the app that you're going to do that with, but I think this gives you several examples of how you can take an app that maybe you have built in-house. Again, it could be macOS or SwiftUI, or macOS or iOS built in SwiftUI. Get it managed. It's not super hard to get a device or to get an app managed. It just has to be, again, there's organization that you want to deal with. The project itself, I didn't include any folders or groups to organize the files, and I did that really just because I wanted you to be able to see them pretty easily and not have to get into nested folders and things like that. But yeah, and how you potentially could package something, even if it's kind of just a small app that you use in-house and is for some odd purpose that only your organization has. This is kind of one way that you can actually get a release version of the app in package form. So I want to recap some of the things. So again, and there'll be time for questions. User defaults, again, reads from and writes to an app's defaults domain, and you can actually specify different domains to tie user defaults to as well, if you wanted to do that. So if you wanted to have, maybe your app performs two major functions, you can have a user default suite specifically for one function and specifically for another. Obviously, you just have to know which key to set in which different domain, but you can do that too. App storage, again, reads from and writes to an app's defaults domain using UI binding. So you have, it's basically kind of user defaults in the back end, but it's wrapped in a property wrapper that a UI can react to. User defaults and app storage are used for both persisting and managing settings in SwiftUI apps. MDM configured components should be disabled if necessary. When it's not, it's annoying. Again, documentation is key. If you have keys that you can manage a particular app with specific keys, it should be thoroughly documented. Talk to your software vendors if you think that they have apps that should be managed or doesn't have good documentation, because again, it's not maybe as hard as some people think. This has all of the slides on this UI, or in the first bit.ly link, and then feedback link there. And I have plenty of time to answer any questions that you have about anything. Again, I wanted to make sure that we have things that we can talk about that we can sell you, but also we wanted to make this as beneficial for you as possible, and we're always available for you to talk to us at our booth. So happy to answer any questions you have. I know it's a technical talk, but I think it's fun to kind of see things related to code, and again, this is one person's take on a particular app. Like someone else could write a very similar app and it looked completely different, and that's okay. So I'm ready to answer any questions that anybody has. You want to use this big blue thing?
Yes, please.
Here, I'd rather pass than hit somebody's coffee.
Do you guys know anything about managed app framework that they announced at WWDC this year, and whether it supports throwing the app storage things inside of the managed app?
I do not.
Yeah.
I have references, people in the room that could maybe help, but
So the managed app framework is available for iOS, iPadOS, and tvOS.
Okay, you want to speak into it so that gets
The managed app framework, I think that you're referring to, replaces app config for iOS, iPadOS, and visionOS apps. But I was looking at that yesterday, and it does not appear that there is support for macOS at this time, but certainly seems like something worth potentially submitting feedback for.
you're right.
anybody else?
Hi. So we deploy a couple in-house applications, and I guess my questions are more relevant to the packaging side of it, if you don't mind. I guess the first question is, what's the purpose of getting the XC archive in addition to the packages? Like, what benefit does that get?
Well, so what ends up happening is the XC archive contains the files that you're packaging up. So you use that as your source to package those files up.
I don't
So-
think you can get a package without first getting an XC archive.
Well, so I guess my workflow is usually
Yeah,
I just go into
no.
archives, export, and then I have a packaging script that runs like PKG build and package build on that.
Yep. I mean, that's a manual way to do what the script is doing, because it's going to create the XC archive, basically, or the same file layout as an XC archive. Just the XC archive is a way to just get it through a command line, but it's basically doing the same thing. You would take, you're manually creating those directories that have, applications folder and then the application,
definitely
and
am,
you're
yeah.
packaging them up. You could basically do the same thing. In the build script, at the very bottom, there was a cleanup section, and one of the cleanup steps that I removed, because I was like, you know what, I kind of want to show them what the XC archive looks like, is removing that XC archive, so you just have packages in your build folder. I just thought it was interesting to take a look at the components that are in that XC archive, but you don't need that after the fact. It's really just your source of truth to create the package.
Gotcha. All right, and then I guess maybe this also because I kind of hack mine together and so it works, but it's kind of like there's certain steps like that I'm kind of missing. The last one is, so I do the PKJ build, I do the product build, then I also notarize it. I notice that you don't. I'm guessing that process that you're doing kind of just does that as well automatically.
So I made a note that it'd be helpful to notarize afterwards. I didn't want to put the commands in to do that. It's two commands.
Yep.
It's one to, I think, submit it, and then the other to staple after it's done. But it's kind of one of those things where maybe you need a tutorial specifically for the notarization. But yeah, that would be the next step. Is you would sign the package while you're building it in both in the PKG in both package creation steps, and then you would notarize your final package afterwards, so that you don't have to manually do that too. But yeah, that's missing from the build, just because I felt like including the steps may have more questions about specifically that. So.
Yeah. All right, yeah, because we have a build script, but basically I build the structure first and then run the build script against that instead of notarize. So I wasn't sure if that was an extraneous step.
That's
but-
basically what this script could do. You would just have two other commands, one again to submit, but then again there are other steps, like you'd have to have a keychain entry that has information related to your account in Apple, and I just didn't want to include that portion. But yeah, you'd notarize it afterwards, and then you could deploy it out with your MDM or distribute it however you want.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Johan,
Just a quick comment on the deleting the XC archive file. You don't need it for publication, but as a software developer, software vendor, you absolutely want to archive it, because inside you have what is called a DSIM folder. The DSIM folder, when you are building apps, contains the symbolization of your build. So when in production, you will have a crash of your app and get crash log from your users. You will get something that is unreadable by default. And using the crash log and the DSIM from that exact build, you will be able to have a clear crash log of where it has crashed in your code. So be sure to keep the XC archive, to have an archive of the DSIM file that will help you to debug your product once it is in production. That's something to really keep in mind. And if you look at symbolizing crash log on the developer the website, you will see the information about how to use this DSIM file and the crash logs that you will get from your fleet when you have real issue with a production release.
I've actually had to solve a Lucid problem without the DSIM.
You feel the pain.
anybody else? Don't be shy. Pass down. Are you going to throw it? Got it.
So if you're working with an app vendor who doesn't support managed preferences, Do you have any suggestions on where to point them besides the video of this presentation on like how to
Yeah.
how to dive in and get going with it?
Well, I mean, there's other things to consider. Like if it's an Electron app, for instance, you'd probably have to roll your own solution potentially or you basically be shelling out of the app to use the defaults command to determine if there's a key set. So there are some situations where if the user maybe it's a Java app, maybe it's a Electron app. This is specific to SwiftUI apps. If you know that it's a SwiftUI app, and if for some reason you're like, hey, like, you send them this, or there's Apple has documentation about some of the things that I showed you, specifically like app storage or the object is force method for user defaults. I mean, there's not a ton to it. Again, there's some things related to when I talked about reactivity to, when the app is deployed already, and say it's a launch agent that is running all the time, because we have this. So we have our patch menu bar app is running all the time, and if the user or the Mac admin deploys changes to it, you want it to be reactive to those changes. And so we kind of have to work around what Apple has, because there are some beta things that are in beta. I don't know. Can you talk about beta things? I don't know. But there are some beta things related to user defaults that may relate to this specific topic of UI reactivity for like a profile that got deployed. But yeah, I mean, it's show them this, show them Apple's documentation. Maybe, again, if it's an Electron app, there could be other reasons if they don't have access to the user default system, like a SwiftUI app. But yeah, I mean, even if for some reason they use an Electron app, there are ways that you can get it to work. It's just not as easy as it is in SwiftUI. So.
Yeah, I would say that any app that's 5 years older or more is probably not written in SwiftUI.
But there is, so if it's written in Objective-C, you have access
Even
to all
just
the same-
regular Swift, though, it's still not as like just add a app storage and you're done.
Well, I mean, you can use user defaults in Swift too,
Oh yeah, 100%.
but yeah, it would be slightly different because you don't have the UI reactivity. Potentially, you're binding to a picture of where you've laid out buttons and things like that with the storyboard. If it's an Objective-C app, you still have access to user defaults with that as well. So there's still, again, it does make sense for me to talk about like an app with a storyboard really in terms of this. SwiftUI is what people are using now. So, but yeah, I mean, these same concepts apply even to older apps that use both storyboard, or if you still use Objective-C or you use Objective-C in the past. Brock.
Can you explain everything I missed?
I'll give you the slides.
Okay.
It's managing a SwiftUI app with an MDM. Taking an app that's not manageable but should have been, and disabling UI components and things like that. That some people, for some reason, I was kind of joking about how you'd have apps that you've managed the key for, but the toggle is still live. And you don't know whether or not it does anything when the user flips the toggle, but it should be disabled. So these are just some of the things that we had talked about. So, anything else? And if you don't want to ask a question here, we'll be at our booth. Ask us anything about anything you want. We're here for you. And I'll give you this just because it's a nice ending screen. Hopefully this is helpful for everybody. Again, if you have any questions after this, just hit us up at our booth and we can help you out.